Thank you all so much for joining me for yet another episode of the Gut Wrench podcast. I almost forgot the name of my show. I'm so sorry. I almost called it the podcast. I almost said, thank you so much for joining me for the podcast. Now, this week we will be looking at the week after the last week that we looked at, which just so happens to be Halloween. Believe it or not, it happened on Halloween Day in 2005. But before we get to that, I took it upon myself to watch AEW Dark from 8 to 22, the beginning of August. So August 2nd, 2022, AEW Dark. And we're going to discuss that a little bit. Before we get into that, however, I feel as though that I must preference this by saying the following phrase. I don't understand how this seems to happen, but I could basically tell you who's going to win every match, every contest before it happened, because they would make it extremely simple for you to deduce who it was that was going to win and was going to lose. Because those of you who were, in case you're not in the loop of professional wrestling, if you're going to win a professional wrestling match, most of the time, the wrestler who's going to win is going to be extremely obvious to the people who pay attention to what happens before and after the match. Or if you're consistent enough, what happens prior to the match being built. Like, if they're going to build the match, oh my god, it's a, let's say for instance, it's an Inferno match, which we've had in professional wrestling before, but usually Inferno matches only take place with one particular wrestler, Kane. Or for that matter, let's say for instance, someone built a character in another company as a death-defying daredevil, and they're so extreme and so crazy, which is another adjective I can use. I can replace it with extreme. I think it's called a synonym. Another synonym that I can use in order to describe who exactly they are. They're crazy, they're extreme, they're over the top, they're so many things that they themselves are. And you put them in a match where they excel, like a ladder match or something, because that's the perfect match for someone who's crazy and daredevilish to show exactly what it is that they can accomplish in an environment where they can excel. They've pretty much done it that way. Not to sound like the Backstreet Boys, I want it that way. Tell me why? Ain't nothing but a heartbreak. Okay, so what we're going to do now is stop quoting 90s songs and get back to the task at hand here. So what I mean to say is that, take for example our first match, the Trust Busters, Arya Daivari and Slim J versus, making their debuts, by the way. You're going to hear me say that a lot, because everyone who loses on this card here is always going to be making their debut. Here's a thought, and it's a very good one too, and for consistency reasons. Instead of hiring jobbers to lose, how about straight booking would be like if you put them up against someone who's an actual contender and those strong booking lines get blurred. Oh my god, he's actually going to win this match, and then all of a sudden there's a swerve. No, he's not. He loses this match. But what a beautiful wrestling match. What a beautiful contest that both of these teams rather, put on for us, the audience, the viewers. Instead of, oh, I got an idea. Why don't we just hire a whole bunch of jobbers to make the other guys, I'm going to put this in air quotes, look good? If nobody knows who your jobbers are, their reputation, or anything like that, then it's going to be extremely difficult for me to say, yeah, I could see those guys winning. No, I can't. I can't see those guys winning. But if you put two main event stars against each other, or for that matter, someone who already has a reputation in the company that you've built here, and not only that, but it's going to save you a lot of money in the long run, rather, from having to scour the local independent scene and then look at people and then say, hey, how would you like to make your AEW debut? Sign them to a contract, even though you're not paying that much money, because no one knows who they are to begin with. I mean, I know a little bit about who Arya Daivari is. I've been watching him since like 2006, maybe. I know a little bit about... No, never mind. I don't know who Slim J is. But what I mean to say is that it becomes extremely difficult for me to build a relationship with someone who I don't already have a pre-existing, I know who that is, type of relationship, at least mutual relationship with, like Slim J. I wouldn't say. Let's say, like Eminem, for instance. I know who he is. Seeing as though they want to bring up Slim J, let's talk about Slim Shady. I know who Eminem is, but I don't like him. His music's not that funny. It's not that, I'd prefer Kid Rock over Slim Shady if I had to pick one of the two, even though both of them are kind of, they've been around in music for a while, but they've kind of overstayed their welcome, But nonetheless, who am I, the Magicians podcast? The Magicians? I meant to say the musicians, not the magicians. I do apologize for that. What am I over here doing, hat tricks now? I'm about to pull a rabbit out of my pants? Like, hang on, I might have a rabbit in my pants. Nope, it's just my dick. Okay, moving on. What we're going to go ahead and do now is stop making lowball jokes. And their opponents were Logan Cruz and Tyshawn Prize. It was a very slow-paced match. It wasn't very entertaining. Arya Daivari, however, did say something. After the match, Tony, I keep wanting to call him Tony Chimmel. It's not his name. Oh well, it's not important. Tony ends up giving them an interview after the match. Afterwards, Arya Daivari says that he's, quote, the richest man in professional wrestling. Let me tell you something. He's probably the poorest man in professional wrestling, because the richest man in professional wrestling has to be either Vince McMahon or the Khan family. One of those two. Because Vince McMahon recently sold a house, for a whopping $112 million. That's not an inflated number. That's exactly what TMZ reported. a $112 million. That was like last month. I remember talking to a friend of mine about it. And, yeah, unless he can beat $112 million for a mansion that Vince McMahon, quote, never goes to anymore, so he decided to sell it. Or for that matter, let's take into example the fact that Vince McMahon has retired at the age of 77. The reason that he had retired is because there are 5 to a reported 6 to 7 women who came forward talking about the fact that whenever they worked for him, they were subjected to a lot, and I mean a lot, of sexual exploitation, including stuff like, if you don't blow me right now, you're not going to get to keep your job. But he paid them all a whopping $12. I am so sorry. I am so sorry I messed that one up. $12 million, apparently. A reported $12 million. Now, if I was to multiply that by 5 on the low end that they're talking about, let's say that there were 5 women. Let's see. 12 times 2 is 24. 12 times 4 is 48. 48 plus 10 would equal 58, 59, 60. That's a whopping $60 million that he would have to pay between each woman, telling them, and apparently that's really hush-hush money. That's what that was. It was hush-hush money, but apparently it didn't work. If someone were to pay me $12 million and tell me not to say anything about sexually exploiting me, unless it was another dude, if it was a woman, for instance, I'm more than likely going to be quiet about it. I don't want to ruin their career. I don't want to, tarnish their reputation. I don't want anything to fundle that. And for that matter, it's going to be like, awkward the next time that we meet. I paid you $12 million and you still talked. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? But at the same time, these are just me making lighthearted jokes. I understand the women coming forward, having I feel like that they shouldn't have accepted the money, but I mean, if you're offered $12 million, you're going to take the $12 million. And it's one of those kind of catch-22 things. Like, you need the money, but at the same time, you need them to learn their lesson. It's kind of like that Bill Cosby situation that we're talking about. We're getting off the rails here pretty fast. Arya Daivari claims that he is the richest man in professional wrestling, and he has nothing to back that up. But he apparently says that in real estate, he's making a lot of money. Okay, Donald Trump, calm down. He's not making any money, and we know it, especially not in real estate. And I gave the tag team match that they had 1 out of 5 stars. It wasn't that entertaining, but looking at this wrestling match, at this card here, before we get to the WWE things, on the WWE side of things, rather, where we'll be talking about everything that's happened last week, as well as the following week for our 2005 event that we will be looking at, called Taboo Tuesday, which was later changed to Cyber Sunday. For whatever reason, I'm sure that they have a reason, mostly because it's probably easier to run a pay-per-view on Sunday for consistency reasons, because that's usually what they do, is they'll run pay-per-views on Sunday night rather than Tuesday night. But the next match that we had after Arya Davari, of course, got done talking about what it was that he got done talking about, how he's the richest in professional wrestling history, or in professional wrestling today, whichever one that he said. We got Harley Cameron versus Willow Nightingale. And Harley Cameron is making her AEW debut. So this is the first time that you would ever see Harley Cameron in a wrestling ring. And she doesn't put up much of a fight. And Willow is this... Well, first off, she gets the pyro. She gets the entrance music. I don't know how else to say it. She gets to come out, you know, all the fans want handshakes or fist bumps or whatever, and she's able to give it to them, and whenever she gets into the ring and then they ring the bell, was fairly entertaining, at least more entertaining than anything that the Trust Busters, Arya Davari and Slim J can put on for a match. And Willow was a ball of energy, let's put it that way. That last name though, Nightingale, sounds extremely familiar, and I'm not sure where I've heard it. I'm not sure whether it's Dragon Ball Z, whether it's Yu-Gi-Oh, whether it's I think it's an anime character or a villain from one of the TV shows that I used to watch whenever I was really young, back when I was like 12 or 11 years old. You know, I make it sound like I'm an old man. I make it sound like I'm some old guy. At least hearing myself, that's what it sounds like. I'm no old guy. And then we get... Oh, yeah, and I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. See, this is perfect booking at its finest, because each match progressively, inherently got better. Each match was almost like, oh, that first one kind of sucked. If I would have went 3 matches and it would have been like, you know, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 5, 1 out of 5, I would have been like, oh man, this event sucks. Why am I looking at it, you know? But each match progressively got better as Diamante, which I think is like Spanish for like dynamite or something, and I could be wrong about that, but Diamante versus Rocky Radley, I think it is. And Diamante was honestly a firecracker as far as this match goes. She was quite the personality to be able to watch against Rocky Radley. And Radley really didn't put up that much of a fight, but Diamante was just not missing a step. Let's put it like that. For an opening act, and she's one of the 3 that they started the show with. For an opening act, she was really good. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. It wasn't that bad of a contest, but at the same time, I can see why she's on AEW Dark. And guess what? Rocky Radley is making her AEW debut. And then we get Casey Rocker plus Caleb Tenemy versus Aaron Solo and Nick Camardo of the Factory. And the Casey Rocker and Caleb Tenemy are making their AEW debuts. And I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. They didn't have very much time. It was clear that they were in a hurry, and no one person stood out as any sort of star. Just generic all around. That's why it gets such the low rating, but it was still better than, like I kept telling myself, it's better than the Trustbusters, Arya Daivari and Slim J, and anything that they can do against Logan Cruz and Tyshawn Prize. Excalibur, Jonathan Hudson makes his AEW debut. So, okay, before the next match starts, Excalibur, for whatever reason, ends up hyping this young man that obviously I've never heard of, and I'm going to assume that the wrestling world doesn't know. Otherwise, Excalibur would have said something like, Jonathan Hudson makes his long-awaited debut. He didn't say that. He said, coming up next, Jonathan Hudson makes his AEW debut. That's great, Excalibur, but could you answer me a question, Excalibur? Who the fuck is Jonathan? Who the fuck is Jonathan Hudson? Whenever someone's going to make their debut, this is my point. You say something along the lines of, unless they're already a celebrity, someone else, don't make it sound like you're excited for that certain person to make their debut, no matter where it is that they're at or where it is that they're from. Okay, as we see the captain, Sean Dean, face off against Jonathan Hudson. So, halfway through this match, or about 5 minutes into this match, the captain, Sean Dean, starts to get agitated by Jonathan Hudson, because Hudson keeps referencing this Tom Hanks movie. You remember the one Tom Hanks movie? I forget the name of it, and I never bothered to look it up, even though I made a note here to look up the title of the movie, where the guy comes in. He's like a Somali pirate. It's based off of a true story of some sort. Anyway, the Somali pirate comes in, he hijacks the ship, and for whatever reason, he looks at Tom Hanks' character and says, "Look at me, look at me." And then he says, "I am the captain now." That's sort of what you get here. I even put a note here that says, reference to Tom Hanks movie. So, what ends up happening is, for whatever reason, Jonathan Hudson looks at Captain Sean Dean and tells him to look at him, look at him, and then he looks at him and then he says, "I'm the captain now." Of course, he wasn't referring to a Disney movie, him being Peter Pan or Captain Hook. He damn sure wasn't referring to anything that Captain Jack Sparrow has done in the last 12 years. He was referring to that Somali pirate movie that's supposed to be based on a true story. Look at me, I am the captain now. Which I really don't know why a Somali pirate would want to get on. Like, what did the Somali pirate hope to obtain? What was the goal of this alleged Somali pirate? That's my question. But they ended up shooting him, if I remember correctly, and just dealing absolutely head traumas levels of damage. Just damage. Head trauma level of damage. But nonetheless, we go now to get another match. Oh, and I give it 3 out of 5 stars. As I said before, each match almost, now I'm going to say almost, because I'm looking at the next match on the card, progressively got better. It was almost like 2.5 stars by Diamante and Rocky Ronaldo. Ridley, rather. Casey Rocker and Caleb Tenati. I don't know how to pronounce that. 2 out of 5 stars. 2.5, 2 out of 5. It's around the same ballpark. And then Excalibur messes up, of course, which I thought was funny. But this match right here, the Captain Sean Dean and Jonathan Hudson match, was quite entertaining. It was quite easy on the eyes. And both men really put on a great performance. And especially the Tom Hanks movie really got me. Look at me. Look at me. I'm the captain now. And guess what? I'm the captain of this podcast. So, if you're enjoying what you hear, maybe you want to subscribe. I shouldn't say subscribe. Oh my God, we're not on YouTube. Maybe you want to show me some love on Twitter at P1_Bay. That's P, the number 1, because I'm number 1. Because I'm the captain now. _ BAY. And don't search it on Twitter, because if you look up that at on Twitter, you might find a very unflattering video. And I swear to you, it's not me. Okay? I'm not in the video. Swear. It's not me. Don't at me about it. The video that you will see of this girl sucking this guy's wiener, it is not me. I asked her many times to take that down, but she's like telling me something about she's selling nudes of other girls and she's pretending to be them, and it's not her. So if you see her, if you perhaps get to DM her, and I will not share her at, because if you find it, then you've apparently found it. It's not me, and that's not her in that video either, but that's not me. Ladies and gentlemen, I hate to let the cat out of the bag right now, but she's probably not going to hear this. It's not me. She's not sucking my wiener, and for that matter, that's not her mouth. If I was to make a sex tape, whether that be oral sex or anything else, or whether or not it would be split into little tiny segments, I would put it in a more appropriate place than Twitter. It's not me. I'm not getting my wiener sucked. Anyway, sorry about that. I truly am sorry. But Serpentico versus Parker Beatrix of the, you remember the Trust Busters, right? The guys who practically got the 1 out of 5 rating from me. Arya Davari claiming that he's the richest man in professional wrestling history, or in professional wrestling today, thanks to real estate. I mean, if he's so rich due to real estate, why doesn't he just stop wrestling? He'd never have to work a day in his life if he's so rich. And plus, I already set a standard for how rich Vince McMahon is. $12 million just for selling his mansion. Nonetheless, Serpentico faces off against Parker Biotrix. I don't know why people need to have such hard to pronounce last names, but it's not important. I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. It was over as soon as it began. The Acclaimed, Max Caster and Anthony Bowens. This was a really good match. Platinum Max Caster and Anthony Bowens faces off against Peter Avalon and Ryan Nemeth of the Wingmen. They didn't exactly make it extremely obvious that Peter Avalon and Ryan Nemeth were. They made it obvious that Peter Avalon and the Wingman, or the Wingmen, Ryan Nemeth, were at least halfway decent competition for the Acclaimed. And I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Because it looked like everyone involved was having a halfway decent time. Next, we take you to a match that did not happen on AEW, but nonetheless, they recorded it in a different pro wrestling setting. I forget the name of the company because I didn't write it down for whatever reason. As Pac, your champion, defends his All-Atlantic Championship against Connor Mills, making his AEW debut. Connor Mills. But nonetheless, I give it 5 out of 5 stars because the amount of storytelling that they did in this match was incredible. Not only did they tell a story between a champion and a challenger, and for that matter, a viable challenger, to someone who was this damn close, and I'm putting my fingers almost together to signify how close that he was. If you had a progress bar and it was to go up all the way to 95% and then tell you that the download had to start over again, 95% would be the amount that Connor Mills had on Pac. The extra 5% probably came from the fact that in the front row there was a story that they were telling about a certain superstar named Kip Sabian. Kip Sabian, who apparently has been following around that bastard Pac ever since he won the All-Atlantic Championship, the title that he is defending here, where apparently Kip Sabian keeps following around Pac with a box over his head. Now, the champion Pac doesn't have a box over his head. Kip Sabian follows Pac around the globe because this match apparently took place in Australia, and last week they were in the UK, and Kip Sabian just keeps following this man. There's parts in the match where Pac abandons his opponent here, Connor Mills, and gets up in this, who we can presume to be Kip Sabian. At least that's what we're presumed to believe. Not only are they telling a story between a champion and a contender in Connor Mills and Pac, what they're telling a story of is a story of a champion and a number one contender. They're building the next rivalry rather than waiting for the next pay-per-view and then being like, okay guys, well, now that pay-per-view's over, let's hurry up and help me make this pay-per-view card. As they pull the caps off of their pen and then they start writing down names and talking about contenders and stuff like that. No, they already have it figured out. They already have what it is that they need to sit down and say, hey, I think that this person is a viable contender. I think that we should start telling the story tonight rather than waiting until 3 weeks from now after the pay-per-view to start telling the goddamn story. AEW is really good whenever it comes to riding the highs of their professional wrestling. Whenever it comes to telling the story and bringing the story almost together. Nonetheless, since we did not get to see the main event from last week, I thought that that's where we should start. For whatever reason, I decided that it was a good idea to preemptively start WWE Monday Night Raw last week. The week before Halloween, by the way, in 2005. Where, for whatever reason, I decided that it was a good idea to start that broadcast without really looking at the main event, which is what we will be looking at today. So last week's main event, I forgot to watch Kurt Angle versus John Cena. And I forgot something else, unless I wrote it down here. Nope, I didn't. Nonetheless, I did not write down a rating for this match. If I had to give it a rating, it would probably be a 2.5 out of 5 stars. Because it was halfway decent, but wasn't, as far as a wrestling match goes, it wasn't that entertaining. And the end is kind of screwy. So, the end of the match sees John Cena in an ankle lock from Kurt Angle. So Kurt Angle's got him in this ankle lock, and the referee, who at the time is Mick Foley, kept counting 2 counts the entire match. 1, 2, 1, 2. He just kept getting like near fall after near fall, and he never would hit the 3 counts because he was trying to be an unbiased professional referee, because of course he was, because screwing John Cena out of a title match would not garner his career any happiness. Well, eventually Mick Foley would get knocked down. So when Foley gets knocked down, they need another referee to come out, and it's Eric Bischoff. Eric Bischoff, who is the titular villain to everyone who is a good guy. So, I mean, if you're a good guy, you automatically oppose anything that Eric Bischoff wants to do. And anything that Eric Bischoff wants to do is something that you automatically do not want to do or interfere with. So you don't want to meet him in a hallway because he likes to throw his weight around. Had that been the case, though, coming out in the striped shirt almost 3 minutes before the match ends is Eric Bischoff, and while Bischoff comes out, Cena's reaching for the ropes. And whenever Cena's reaching for the ropes, Bischoff is telling him that he's going to tap. He's going to tap. He's going to tap. You're going to tap out, John Cena. You're going to tap out. But John Cena's this, I never give up. I'm Mr. America. Americans never give up. If you give up, you're a communist. And I'm no communist, goddammit. That's John Cena. If you don't know, that's who John Cena is. He invokes that personality. Anyway, John Cena ends up giving up. But do you know how he ends up giving up? Is the fact that, for whatever reason, Eric Bischoff takes John Cena's wrist, and then he does this number right here on the wrestling mat. He makes him make that noise, that, my hand just hit the ring mat, so therefore I tapped out. And then he rings the bell. After he rings the bell, Kurt Angle is considered or announced as the winner. I thought that was a whole bunch of baloney, and I didn't know how to feel about it, but it made me smile. I was like, what? This is not compelling television. This is not entertaining. This is just craziness. You can't be doing that. Before that, we get another match, though. It's Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch, the World Tag Team Champions, versus Rosie and the Hurricane. Now, the Hurricane says that since last week, he wants to be called Gregory. I'm not sure what he means by since last week, because looking over my notes, I don't necessarily remember there being a match with the Hurricane that I reported on. And I don't necessarily remember skipping like a match or a segment or anything of that nature. But the Hurricane wants to be referred to as Gregory Helms now, and he's left his partner high and dry. Eric Bischoff takes Cena's hand, slams it on the mat, and then claims that he tapped even though he did not. He did no such thing. That's like an M. Night Shyamalan twist, if you think about it. What I put for my notes. Okay, so since that's over with, we can go ahead and look at the following, which is 10/31/2005. In case you don't know, those are the correct digits to spell Halloween in Egyptian. I'm joking. Don't spell Halloween in Egyptian and then say that I'm the one who told you how to spell Halloween in Egyptian. This is literally the date for Halloween, 10/31/2005. Don't make fun of me. Alright. Anyway, we go to a Monday Night Raw where we start. 1 second. Shit. We start this broadcast, not this broadcast as in this podcast broadcast, but nonetheless we start this broadcast of Monday Night Raw with a segment known as the Master Lock Challenge. So for those of you who don't know, there was a man, once upon a time, from Nantucket, I'm joking, featuring SmackDown's Rey Mysterio, and Teddy Long said, "Believe that," before Seth Rollins, Roman, or Dean Ambrose ever said it. Believe that, playa. Well, he sort of said it, because he said player after, but that's not the point. Anyway, we're supposed to be starting the Master Lock Challenge, which involves Chris Masters. For whatever reason, he allows a superstar to try to make a name for themselves by getting out of the quote unbreakable submission hold that he has, which in all reality, The Master Lock Challenge. The Master Lock sort of looks like the Hurt Lock. The Hurt Lock, of course, being the submission maneuver that Bobby Lashley employs. But in all honesty, even though it looks similar, I'm sure there's some difference, right? No. They're both full Nelson holds. And that's basically what a Master Lock is. It's a full Nelson hold. And if you've been following along for the past 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, we watch a JR get, canned, and that's supposed to be the whole story here, is that Steve Austin wants to save his best friend's job, whatever the case may be. Or maybe the story is something to do with SmackDown versus Raw, so that they can sell more video games. And then the next match on the docket. Oh, the Master Lock Challenge never happens, by the way. Rey Mysterio gets disrespected, and so during the segment, Chris Masters asks Rey Mysterio if he has any questions, little man, before we begin. And then he says, "No, I don't have any questions. No questions." And then he says, "It's more of a statement." And then he smacks Chris Masters upside the head with a microphone, and then kicks him in the face. Anyway, the SmackDown guys end up running out the Monday Night Raw guys, despite that being their show, and Eric Bischoff's pretty mad about it. He's like, "No, we can't lose. We can't lose on our own show." Kurt Angle versus Tajiri. And I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. Probably didn't last more than 5 minutes. Kurt Angle picking up a victory. Never mind. John Cena ends up interfering. Rob Conway versus Eugene, because Eugene, for whatever reason, feels as though that Rob Conway has been disrespecting all of the WWE legends that he grew up with. And if you'll remember, I think it was not last week, but it was the week before that, Rob Conway faced off against Doink the Clown. Now, whether or not it was actually Doink the Clown, or whether or not it was a Doink the Clown impersonator, I'm still unsure of, because Doink the Clown has been only played by like 4 people. The original Doink the Clown, of course, being Matt Bourne. And I gave it 1 out of 5 stars. Reference to the Burger King Bret Hart versus Jerry Lawler match. Whenever Eugene has Rob Conway on the ground, and for whatever reason, Jerry the King Lawler comes out, and he does his signature move, the fist drop, and he does it off the top rope. But the only problem with that is he's wearing a Burger King mask. And see, back in 1990, now I don't want to get the year wrong, but I'm probably going to. It's one of these 3 choices, okay? It's either back in 1992, back in 1997, or back in 1994. Jerry the King Lawler and Bret Hart were having a feud in which that Bret Hart called Jerry Lawler. He said, "You're no king. Matter of fact, you're the king of one thing." And then he says, "You're the king of Burger King." And they just start brawling and fighting. They just tear each other apart. So, for whatever reason, Jerry Lawler putting on a Burger King costume, or a Burger King mask rather, seems kinda silly, seeing as though that years prior he was called the Burger King. Todd Gresham dresses up as Harry Carey because, as I told you, it's Halloween, and I'm not really sure who Harry Carey is, but for whatever reason he speaks in a foreign accent. Come on, guys, you gotta be able to embrace the moment. I'm legendary sports enthusiast Harry Carey. I don't know what Todd Gresham was going for. Evolution of Mick Foley, as he gives 3 promos to show on the production truck, is genius. So for whatever reason, Carlito's in the ring, and Carlito, this whole episode is just one big advertisement for their pay-per-view that's happening tomorrow. Keep in mind, we've only seen 2 wrestling matches. You see segment after segment after segment with almost no end to each segment. And for whatever reason, they just want to drone the segments and go on and on and on about what happened last week, about what happened 2 weeks ago, about what happened 3 weeks ago to get us to this point. Coach says Goldust is in his corner, and Coach beats up Dave Batista. I can't believe this. Beats up Dave Batista from SmackDown with some help from Vader and Goldust. And for whatever reason, which is a reason that I still can't figure out, I don't remember this happening, but Dave Batista is the World Heavyweight Champion from SmackDown. You mean to tell me that they couldn't have found a number 1 contender to face off against Batista? Like, the number one thing that you should always worry about whenever it comes to professional wrestling is who your champions are and how to have them defend their championships in a manner in which that makes them look strong even though they lose their title, so that you set the bar for the next champion, if you were to have a champion, to take that title away from your former champion, to say, hey, he's earned it, he's beat this guy so bad that now he can't stand on his own 2 feet. But Coach says that Goldust and Vader are in his corner. Now, I'm not really sure how we got to that point, but you remember the whole... It's almost like they're throwing this out the window, too. And now, I could be wrong, but it's almost seems like that they're throwing this part out the window, even though they promised us this part right here. You remember the whole Steve Austin is fighting for JR's job, and if Steve Austin loses, then Steve Austin loses his job type of story that we were going with? This one seems almost like last minute just to replace it, because Mr. McMahon comes out, Vincent Kennedy McMahon, that is. He comes out and he presumes to say that Steve Austin was in an accident. I want to put accident in air quotes, but I really don't think that I can. My guess is that they had a last minute change because they thought to themselves, scratching their heads, what if we took Austin and we made him interfere on the match against Coach and Batista? And then they were like, that's great, but how's Austin going to interfere on a match between Coach and Batista at Taboo Tuesday whenever Coach and Batista ain't having a match, but Austin and Coach are having a match? Oh yeah, never mind. They're definitely not going to have a street fight, because I don't know. Because you would rather see a verbal debate, or you'd rather see an arm wrestling contest, right? An arm wrestling match. Or would you rather see a street fight, which seems to be what everybody's going for. There's this one part on commentary where Jerry the King Lawler, for whatever reason, he teases Coach about the whole street fight thing, and then he tells him, you better hope and pray that you get Steve Austin in a verbal debate and not a street fight. Because if you get him in a verbal debate, you might be able to win. But anyway, it almost seems like that they're replacing Steve Austin with, I don't know why I almost said Goldberg, Dave Bautista. You know, Dave Bautista, the Guardian of the Galaxy. Anyway, it shows highlights from their Aussie tour, their tour from Australia, and then we get the match that we were supposed to get last week, which I thought was just wonderful, because I didn't want to see it to begin with, but it's fine. It's fine. Triple H versus Viscera. Viscera, in case you don't know, is the 500-pound love machine, which is totally south of the direction that he was going in the 90s, whenever he would come out with this other guy named Midian, and they would all try to crucify people with The Undertaker. But, I mean, that's none of my business. So I mean, oh, God. 1 out of 5 stars, because the match was over before it even began. If you can't see that, you can't see me, is what John Cena says. The next match we get is a Texas Tornado match. A Texas Tornado tag team match in which the... Okay, so a Texas Tornado tag team match is basically like saying, me and you are tag team partners, and the next 2 people that you look at, like literally if you're walking down a hallway right now, or if you're beside of a bank, and if you're in a bank and you notice that there's 2 people that are looking at you, the next 2 people that you see are going to be in a tag team match, and they're going to be your opponents. So had that been the case, instead of your traditional tag team match where people would usually tag in and then tag out, it's almost like all 4 people are in the ring at one time. And Kane and the Big Show versus the Heartthrobs, I think they're called, Romeo and Antonio. And it's a squash match, basically. Little bit of one-upsmanship between Kane and the Big Show, wherever it's like, hey, anything you can do, I can do better. I can do anything better than you. No, you can't. Yes, I can. No, you can't. Yes, I can. No, you can't. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. For whatever reason, they have that little, back and forth showmanship, if you will, or showman's offship. And for whatever reason, Romeo and Antonio don't fight back at all. They're just like, throw us around, treat us like rag dolls and pin cushions. 1 out of 5 stars. Not very entertaining. Wouldn't recommend watching it again. And then we get a Halloween Divas costume contest where Mickie James takes the mic from the King and tells the crowd they should cheer for Trish. After they throw out Victoria, they then wishbone Candice Michelle for whatever reason. Candice Michelle didn't even do anything. Literally, she did nothing wrong. But it seems to be a whole, like bad girls versus good girls. And I don't mean that in the sexual manner that I'm not trying to say it in, because I'm trying not to sexualize these women. But anytime, both are applicable for sex, let's just put it that way. You've been a bad girl. Have you been a good girl today? You know, please stop. Please, no more. No more. Don't even talk to your kids like that, you know? Whew. Okay. For whatever reason, they start wishboning Candice Michelle, where Ashley has her leg and Maria has her other leg and Trish has like her arm and Mickie James has like her other arm, and they're all pulling in all opposite directions, almost like trying to make her suffer for whatever reason. I'm not even sure how they got her on the ground. It almost seems like she just tripped, fell. At the time that they're showing what's happening on the camera, whenever they come back, whenever the camera actually focuses in on Candice Michelle and her being wishboned by all the other women, she was on a vertical base. Her feet were basically on the ground. It's so hard. It's so hard for me not to, like, how did she get on the ground? I didn't see anyone push her. She doesn't have two left feet like she used to be a dancer. Like, she was in Playboy. Like, I don't understand how she got on the ground. Please, show me the footage of Candice Michelle tripping. Where is it? It doesn't exist. But I don't know how to, like, the audience were supposed to, for whatever reason, Jerry Lawler kept like, and what do you think about this costume and this costume and this costume? He got about to the third costume, and Mickie James took the microphone and said, "You guys shouldn't be cheering for any of these bimbos. You should be cheering for Trish." Because Mickie James was dressed up as Trish Stratus. Because I know why she did it. Wait, don't tell me. Impersonation is the sincerest form of flattery. That's why she dressed up as Trish Stratus. Mickie James is a genius. You always dress up as your role models. Anyway, our main event. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. Shawn Michaels versus champion John Cena. It's really clear what they're going to do at the pay-per-view. It's going to be Shawn Michaels versus John Cena. It's going to be Kane and the Big Show facing off against the tag team champions. And they'll more than likely lose. Because if I remember correctly, Lance Cade and Trevor Murdoch end up winning their match to retain their titles, and then not even 3, I could be wrong, not even 3 or 4 weeks or 5 or 6 weeks would go by, and Lance Cade would go home and shoot himself in the head. Not sure why. But the good news is, I guess it's not really good news. It's good news for me. I got to meet Trevor Murdoch, like, whenever I was 12 years old. He didn't seem impressed at all. I asked him to sign something, and he did. He didn't even charge. I don't know if he was charging for autographs or not, but I forgot what he signed. I think it was a piece of paper. I used to have it in a drawer in my room, but I'm pretty sure it got thrown away. Oh well. R.I.P. me, and R.I.P. Trevor Murdoch. Or Lance Cade, rather, not Murdoch. I don't know if Murdoch is dead, but I know that Lance Cade went home 6, 8, 10 weeks later and shot himself in the head. Who knows why? But the WWE didn't even pay that much attention to it, and he didn't get much media, coverage, as far as I know. And I'm really uncertain on a few things that happened. Why it happened, or for that matter, what made it, like, what it was that transpired to get us to that point, I'm still unsure. About what or how. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go to bed. It's like 10 o'clock for me, almost 11. Thank you all so much for joining me this week, and for consistency reasons, unlike our buddy Kevin Owens, who's not consistent at all. I hate to steal it. I really do. I hate to steal Kenny Omega's thunder, but that's a wrap